The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.
Whoa! Did you hear that? That was a different one, for sure.
Yeah, that was a leopard frog. Adding that one to our survey, that's 3 different kinds already. Our ears and eyes are just 2 of the tools you'll be using today to help us discover the secrets of this special place.
It's a wetland, one of the most important ecosystems in Wisconsin, or anywhere for that matter.
What makes this place so special, and how does it affect your life?
Maybe the bigger question is, what can you do to help save these shrinking ecosystems and all the things that depend on it to survive?
We'll climb aboard as we find out while investigating creatures big and small on our quest for wetland wisdom. Here, Into the Outdoors!
You might not see it without looking closely, but here, use these and look over there. See that little guy right there? He's a muskrat, and just one of the hundreds of species that depends on the wetlands to survive.
Like so many other plants and animals that we're going to discover here, a wetland is the only place they can live. His big cousin the beaver can actually create their own wetlands by building dams.
Preserving existing wetlands is much easier and cheaper than creating new ones. But sometimes, so much damage has been done to a wetland that we must rebuild the habitat from scratch.
But it's critical to reverse a trend that has made our shrinking wetlands such valuable ecosystems. Here's the deal.
Scientists estimate that before European settlers came to Wisconsin, we had over 10 million acres of wetlands here. But as people farmed the land and built roads and cities over time, they drained the wetlands, and boy did they drain.
By the time they'd finally made a law to help protect the wetlands and all the things that live there, we'd already lost half our land. That's 5 million acres.
Do you know how much that is? That's almost 8,000 square miles. Dried up, gone, and all the plants and animals that once lived there.
We know that we can't change the past, but we can sure learn from it.
And we've learned that protecting wetlands is really important. We've also learned how to create and restore some wetlands, like this one.
Okay, you're not a muskrat, so why should you care? Come on, roll up your pant legs and let's go find out.
You might think by looking at it that this shallow water in the wetland doesn't do very much. Any ideas on the big jobs it does?
Wetlands can actually help prevent flooding. No kidding. They act as buffers between surface runoff and rivers, and they also reduce flooding peaks by as much as 60%. Did you know that 1 acre of wetlands can store up to 1 million gallons of floodwater? They can help save lives and property.
They can also help fight pollution by supplying clean water to our lakes and rivers.
Here's how it works. When rain and meltwaters flow through farms and cities, they can pick up pollution. If those waters flow through a wetland, the wetland can naturally filter out most of the pollution. By the time it enters a lake or river, it's clean. They're like natural waste treatment plants.
Ah, and the trickle-down effect of that filtered clean water helps humans and wildlife too.
Yeah, let's not forget about the wildlife. Any ideas of what kinds of wildlife depend on wetlands to survive?
The kinds that like water?
Of course, silly. But seriously, did you know that 1/3 of Wisconsin's endangered plants and animals depend on wetlands to survive? We've already started our list of what amphibians live here, not to mention everything else, including the plants.
And we haven't even gotten to the birds yet. There's over 350 species of birds that use these wetlands. Wow! This wetland survey is going to take forever.
Don't get bogged down with your list. Start with the bigger things, like beavers, otters, deer, and bears.
Did you say bears?
Sure, bears live around these wetlands too. Josh, where are you going? Oh, wait for me. Hey, why'd you take off so fast back there? Is Josh afraid of the bears?
Shh, be quiet. I'm becoming a wetlands ecologist. Besides, I'm good with bears. They're actually one of the species wetlands ecologists use to determine the health of an ecosystem. If you have bears, you have a healthy ecosystem.
How'd you get to be a wetlands ecologist so fast?
I'm in training, but I'm starting to get it. Here's how it works. Ecology is the relationship between all the living things here with each other and the non-living parts of the environment. Scientists who study how all the parts of this wetland interact with each other are called wetland ecologists.
Let's see, you've been on the job about 5 minutes. What have you learned so far? Or are you still wet behind the ears with this ecology stuff?
Ha ha, you're so funny. See that crane over there? Here, take a look. That's a sandhill crane. His endangered cousin, the whooping crane, also uses these wetlands. Like herons, they're some of the bigger predators here.
I thought predators had teeth and claws.
Not necessarily. Those big birds prey upon other critters that live here, such as frogs, salamanders, fish, crawfish, and insects. They've got quite a menu here.
Oh, I get it. By studying them, you can see how they interact with the rest of the food chain.
Right, it's like a pyramid. At the bottom are the abiotic or non-living parts, like sunlight, water, air, soil, and nutrients. Then you have all the living or biotic parts going up. It starts with lots of plants and small creatures that get bigger in size but fewer in numbers as you move up the pyramid. Your predators sit at the top.
Oh, now I get it completely. By studying any one species and how it fits into the pyramid, you can see how it might relate to or impact something else above it or below it.
Right, like one of the important plant producers in the pyramid that we're going to be hunting for next. Come on!
Learn how these pyramids work by logging on to intotheoutdoors.org. Coming up next, we'll actually take an active role in being part of the food pyramid here. Don't worry, no bears involved. Don't go away, there's more Into the Outdoors.
And now back into the outdoors.
Okay, now we know what a wetland is and how important it is and all the parts that make up a wetland ecosystem. But now we have to take a close look at one of our primary producers and get the team out here to check this out.
Do you see her anywhere?
Nope, not yet. Are you sure you're looking at that map right? Great, now what do we do?
Let's ask our eyes and ears from above. Come in, Mission Control. Mission Control, do you read me?
I'm here. What do you need now?
My brilliant tadpole of a guide here has got us lost, and we can't find Josie in the wild rice harvest.
1 second. According to your GPS location, she's north of you. Start heading that way while I monitor what's happening.
Hey, Josie, come in. What the heck are they doing out there? It looks like they're beating up those poor plants.
Hi there, I'm here with Brett McConnell and we're getting ready to do some wild rice harvesting. These are some of the tools you use to harvest wild rice. So Brett, these are really light. What are they made out of?
Well, the tools you have in your hands are the cedar poles that we use when we just lay the rice over the canoe, and then you kind of rake or bat the rice into the bottom of the canoe.
So you just sort of lower it in here and you hit it?
Yep. It naturally reseeds itself in the wild, so if you just kind of rake it or give it a little tap, it'll fall right into the canoe real easy.
Is there anything that can disturb the growth of wild rice?
A lot of things. You know, it's an indicator species, so it's fragile. That's why this project's so critical. It gives us an opportunity to create a seed bank for areas of the reservation that we want to restore. It helps us out, and hopefully in the future we'll restore at least partially back to what the Lacoudere people had once.
It takes a lot of hard work to convert a cranberry bog into a wild rice bed. The tribes are doing it to bring back an important native food source.
So what did you have to do to convert this area from a cranberry bog to a wild rice bed?
What we've done is we've taken out all the dikes and altered the ditches, and we've come up with a plan to create the whole entire 44-acre complex into wild rice. And what we're going to be using it for is not only a source of food and a place for tribal members to harvest the wild rice, but we're also going to be using it as a seed bank for other areas of the reservation that historically did produce wild rice.
That's pretty neat. So wild rice is still an important food source for humans and animals.
Yes, it is.
Now I see why it's so necessary to restore the entire habitat. Thanks for explaining it.
Believe it or not, wild rice beds are a great place for bird watching. The wetlands surrounding the marshes provide a natural habitat for more than 200 species of wildlife, many of them birds. Just listen to all the sounds of nature. Sandhill cranes, bald eagles, and the great blue heron are just some of the birds that sometimes make their homes on these wetlands. Intertribal organizations have developed a wetlands and waterfowl enhancement initiative called the Circle of Flight. Funds from the program are used to help maintain and protect waterfowl and wetland habitat throughout the Great Lakes region.
Hey, to get wild rice cooking tips, log on to intotheoutdoors.org.
Stay with us because next we need your help fighting wetland invaders.
Don't go away, there's more Into the Outdoors.
And now back into the outdoors.
Were you surprised to find that wild rice grows wild in our wetlands? I bet next time you eat some, you'll remember.
Okay, we saw how it's part of people's diets, right? So let's build an ecological pyramid using wild rice and see how it relates to everything else in the wetland ecosystem. Before we start, take a moment to visualize what your pyramid might look like. Where is the wild rice located? And what else does it affect? All right, let's start building our wetland ecology pyramid with rice as a producer. Let's put it here, above the abiotic level. What does the rice need from the level below it to grow? Sunlight, water, nutrients, and certain temperatures. Now, what consumers do we include in the layer above the rice? Okay, us humans, but what else? Wetland waterfowl, such as ducks and geese, love to eat wild rice seeds. That's one reason you can find so many ducks in the wild rice when the seeds are ripe. Lots of other birds also consume the nutritious wild rice seeds, including bobolink, sora, song sparrow, crow, and red-winged blackbirds. Mammals also eat the entire wild rice plant. Ones you can add to the consumer level are muskrats and white-tailed deer. Don't forget fish like carp that can uproot and eat young plants. You can also add insects to the consumers, like bumblebees and some flies that eat the wild rice pollen from the flowers. Then finally, consider all the small aquatic creatures that live in the shelter of the wild rice beds, from frogs to insects to nesting birds.
Now that we've built the main parts of the ecological pyramid, with rice as a big producer, take some time later on to fill in some of the other species that belong in the pyramid. Does that bald eagle fit in there somewhere?
Unfortunately, foreign species can sometimes creep into the pyramid. These invasive species can really mess with the balance of our delicate ecosystems. That's why we're here at the wetlands, to find out what invasive plant is causing problems here and in wetlands all across America. Aha! Look, the suspect, Phragmites australis, or common reed, looks harmless enough, but it pushes out our native plants and is taking over this wetland area.
Well, Caroline, Phragmites moves in and replaces native vegetation, and it's a very aggressive plant. And when that happens, it reduces the habitat for other species like eagles, which we had nesting here not too long ago. And they have since moved on because the Phragmites took over and removed the type of habitat that species like eagles or ducks and geese require to carry out their life cycle.
Has this always been a problem in your wetlands?
No, Phragmites is relatively recent to this wetland. This was one of our first wetland restoration projects. It's about 20 years old. And it was a great place for about 15 years. It was home to a lot of ducks and geese, great blue herons, things of that nature. We had eagles that nested here. But about 5 years ago, Phragmites took over the entire site. It was nothing but Phragmites, and it eliminated the habitat for those animals. With Phragmites, the main way it spreads is its root fragments get stuck to farm equipment and construction machinery, and when they move to new places, the root fragments can fall off and it can start repopulating a new area. It also produces seed, and that can blow with the wind and take root in a new spot far away from where it started.
So how do you try and get rid of Phragmites?
Well, we use a combination of methods. We plow it, we mow it, we've tried burning it, and we use herbicides.
What would happen if you didn't control the Phragmites?
It would take over this wetland. And if that happens, the diversity of species that call this wetland home would be greatly reduced.
So how do you monitor the spread of Phragmites?
Well, we use technology. We use GPS units, and we map where it is and how much of it there is. That way we can plan for eradicating it.
That sounds great. I want to help.
Okay, I'll put you to work. Here's some students from the Oneida Nation High School that help us with our monitoring. I'll let them show you how it's done.
All right, thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
So, Anthony, Tony told us that you guys use GPSs to monitor the Phragmites. How does that work?
So we take GPS points around the perimeter so we know how much is here and where it is.
Can I try using the GPS?
Yeah, sure. Click mark. Put on the table.
Cool. The United Nations doing their part to try and stop invasive species. Now it's time for you to do yours. If you'd like to find out what invasive species live in your area, visit intotheoutdoors.org.
Stay with us, because next we're going to hunt out any and all life in the wetland. Don't go away, there's more. Into the Outdoors.
And now back into the outdoors.
So, we've learned all about the invasive species, but what about the good species? Let's talk to aquatic biologist Jim. So, why is it important to monitor species in the wetlands?
The reason we do this is because these different animals that live in here have different habitat requirements and things they are comfortable in to carry out their life cycles. And by seeing what kinds and what numbers there are of those, it lets us know the health of the wetland.
So, what kinds of things are we finding?
Okay, so all these things that are in these cases are called caddisflies. These guys right here are adapted to these ephemeral or temporary wetlands because they are able to go through the dry period, and the next year the new ones will be born. They go through a dry period in the egg form. These right here, these big guys swimming around here, those are predaceous diving beetles, and they're kind of the predators of this wetland here. Got a leech in here. We've got some fingernail clams. See these little clams here? And that little red worm flipping around in there, that's called a bloodworm, or it's a midge. And then there's a lot of little things in here swimming around that are hard to see. That right there is an amphipod. It's a kind of crustacean. It's real important for a food source.
So, what do these animals tell us about the ecosystem?
Well, these animals right here, with the kind of variety that we have of the different kinds here, tells me that this is a pretty healthy wetland here with a natural community.
So, why is it important to preserve and have wetlands in the United Nations?
Wetlands are really good at preventing floods. They act as big sponges. But a very important reason that we restore them is because of the habitat. As you can see, it's very important habitat for animals, all the way up to more familiar things like the big birds and things like that. As well as, nice, healthy ecosystems are great places to go hunting and just simply enjoy the outdoors.
So, who helps monitor these wetlands?
Well, the Oneida Water Resources team monitors our wetlands, but we do get help from the Oneida Nation High School students.
I want to help out.
Great, let's go.
So, Jessica, what are we looking for?
This is what we use to catch salamanders.
but it looks like we found a minnow.
So why is it important to monitor these species in the wetland?
It's important because you want to make sure that everything in here is healthy and you kind of want to see what's in here.
Let's go find some more. Let's see what we have here. We see some caddisflies right here, and then some kind of snail.
And also a beetle.
Oh yeah, I see that right there.
As you've seen, insects make up a valuable part of our wetlands ecosystem. They consume plants and other insects, and consumers consume them. One common consumer of insects are my favorite amphibians. They have long tongues. You guessed it, it's frogs. And we're here to determine what frogs live in this ecosystem. If we try to sneak up on them and visually tell what kind they are, well, those little guys hop off or dive underwater. They're really wary of predators, so we need to rely not on our senses of sight, but hearing to tell us who's out there. Hear that one? It sounds like running your fingernail across a plastic comb. It sings in groups, so it makes sense that they call it a chorus frog. Check. Whoa, that's different. It's one of the few frogs with black spots like a leopard. It's a leopard frog. Check that one. Aha! That's one of the first frogs we hear in spring. It's named after its little peeping sound. It's called a spring peeper. They're a little frog and hard to spot. Any guesses why frogs sing? It's the same reasons birds sing, to attract mates and establish territory. I have a lot more frogs to survey, so let's you connect back to mission control. Bye. Oh, that one sounds interesting.
Thanks, Frog Boy. Don't get lost out there in the dark.
I heard that.
So today we learned about why wetlands are dynamic ecosystems and why we should help manage them. Without laws to protect draining them and our help restoring them, we would lose more wetlands, along with all the plants, animals, and insects that call them home. We also learned about some of the exciting careers in wetland science and management that you could consider someday. See if any of these tickle your interest. Hydrologists, to study the wetlands water cycle. Botanists, to study native and invasive plants. Aquatic biologists, to study the fish and creatures in the wetlands ecosystem. Resource managers, to include wetlands and management plans. Ecologists, to study and manage all the interrelated parts of the environment and ecosystem. Water quality managers, to study and help control how wetlands impact our water quality. Wetland program coordinators, to help manage, restore, and protect our wetlands.
And like so many people we met today, you can also volunteer to help manage our valuable wetland areas. Oops, we got some final Wetlands Wisdom coming in.
So next time you see a wetland, consider everything that lives there and how that ecosystem affects your life in some way.
And don't be shy about exploring it for yourself, as you continue to learn firsthand by going
into the outdoors! The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.